curlews are really unlucky in that they're kind of being hit with a double whammy. They're getting hit really hard during their nesting phase and really hard during their wintering phase. So when they nest, like a lot of waders, their nest is kind of like a tiny little bare scrape in the ground. And they like to nest on tundra or taiga or meadows. And in the UK, that kind of, by definition, means farmland. And so curlews are now really threatened because they nest in these farm fields, and modern agricultural practices, some of which are in line with EU guidelines, stipulate that grass has to be cut earlier and more often during the year. And so this poses a massive threat both to the eggs, which would be smashed to bits, and also the young babies, because they're not altricial, they can't just fly from birth. A huge proportion are kind of ground up in combine harvesters, which is really sad.
It really is, and there was a fantastic documentary that Roby and I went to go watch. We just spontaneously went to a film festival, which was great fun.
It was great.
But it was a documentary called Keeper of the Cool. It's really, really really nice insight into curlews, but also really sad because you've got this one farmer who is really trying to follow these curlews that are on his farm and looking out for the chicks, and they tag them. They're using telemetry to kind of monitor the chicks, and it really does give an insight into kind of the plight that the curlews are facing. You've got predators, you've got foxes, badgers, red kites, buzzards, and then, like you just mentioned with the farming, you've got this horrible scene with like this big tractor coming in, and then the farmer runs out and he's like, I need to check on my curlews, and it's like, it's heartbreaking.
Yeah, and what's really quite interesting about that is, we would usually think that natural predation is not something that we should interfere with, but actually because curlews nest in farmland so much, the farmland mosaic environment, which is artificial entirely, actually supports a much higher density of predators which might take curlews than if they were on the tundra. So in an area of farmland in the UK, you'll have a much higher concentration of foxes and badgers and things like that than you would on, a vast expanse in Siberia where these birds might otherwise be nesting. And foxes in particular are a massive, massive threat to these curlews when they're breeding.
In this documentary, it was an electric fence, so it's just very humane. It's just a deterrent against sort of land predators like things like foxes and badgers. It won't harm the foxes or the badgers. It will just be a little shock, and it keeps the curlews safe. Yeah,
absolutely. And there's also a fantastic conservation organisation called Curlew Country, which are going to nests, removing the eggs, hand-rearing the chicks, and then releasing them. And so you get a much lower infant mortality for this species. I mean, it doesn't solve all the problems. It's very much a temporary solution, largely because of this next kind of threat they're under, which is their winter feeding grounds. So obviously these are wading birds, so they don't just like mudflats, they also like kind of flooded coastal fields and bogs. And these are being lost in the UK at a massive rate due to drainage and tilling. And so they're actually losing their winter feeding grounds, which they depend on to build up the fat reserves to get them through the winter and into spring.
Yeah, no, I think that's the hard part for me. It's when they've got natural predators, I can understand that that's sort of it's just part of the natural cycle. But then when you've got human behaviours interfering severely, then I start to think that we really need to play a role in that